Welcome to Cherry Bekert's Industrial Manufacturing Podcast. We're excited to continue our latest series titled Building a Competitive Recovery, where we will discuss the challenges of this COVID recovery landscape and provide strategies to position your company for future success. I'm Matt Brady, leader of the firm's Industrial Manufacturing Industry Group. Today, I'm joined by Jeff Bengtson, leader of our Deal Advisory Services Group. Jeff joins me today to discuss part 3 of our series on the pros and cons of integration and overall M&A activities for your business. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks, Matt. Glad to be here.
Well, happy to have you. Certainly know, based on the environment, you're a busy man. So Jeff, let's just dive in. What are the general industry trends you're seeing that are driving this M&A demand specifically for industrial companies?
Thanks, Matt. Well, I think that, pandemic resistant businesses are in high demand. We all know that travel, hospitality, entertainment industries have been the most, affected by the pandemic. But manufacturing companies that supply and support real estate, construction, digital services, continue to grow and continue to be in high demand. Since the onset of the pandemic, we've become ever more reliant on digital services with working from home, remote schooling, virtual meetings. We've all been on a ton of Teams and Zoom calls, and all of it's dependent on reliable high-speed technologies. And so if you have a manufacturing company that's supplying those industries, you're certainly in high demand. The second thing I think is there's plenty of capital available. That has really been the case for the last, 5 or so years. And I think there has been a pent up demand post-COVID, where a lot of middle market firms may have been a little bit uneasy doing deals in 2020. Now it's like accelerator, to the floor. Let's get as many deals done as possible. And the way, sort of the way I break it down, I sort of break it down between sell side deals and buy side deals. On the sell side, I think more owners are wanting to sell in 2021, very much because of these impending tax increases, the Biden tax plan. So when you take that, a lot of sellers out there, and combine that with all the capital that's looking for good deals, that's the reason why we're running around with our hair on fire. And then, we probably talked ad nauseum about Biden's tax plan, but obviously moving cap gains from 20% to 40% range, increasing individual income tax rates, from up to 39.6 from 37, and corporate income tax rates up. That obviously is motivating sellers on the sell side. And then on the buy side, I sort of break it into private equity and then sort of manufacturing clients. And on the private equity side, they continue to invest in new platforms, but they're doing significant add-ons to their existing platforms. So in a typical year, I may have seen 3 or 4 add-ons for various platforms on certain PE clients. This year, we're seeing 25 add-ons. And so not only do we get a new platform to do, our diligence work on, but they're going to add on 10 new deals on top of that, to improve their overall margins in their business. And I have 2 examples, if you don't mind me sharing. One was a large automotive accessories platform that one of our clients has invested in over the last 5 years. They've done at least 15 add-ons this year, because what they're seeing is a lot of the sellers, in the lower middle market, were going through distribution to buy a lot of the products, right? And so the distribution was taking a good amount of their margins out of the business, and the large platform is dealing direct with the manufacturer. So by buying these guys, they eliminate that middleman and are able to increase their margins. And that's one of the reasons why they're able to pay higher multiples for these businesses. And then the second one is a lot of manufacturers are selling through e-commerce based platforms like Amazon, Home Depot, PayPal, eBay, etc. And so when you add a new product line, if you've already got your infrastructure in place, you can gain scale, you can eliminate inefficiencies, getting rid of owner compensation, on lifestyle type businesses, getting better freight rates now that you have more products and you're bringing full containers over from overseas. Getting rid of redundant sales and marketing functions is really, really, juicing the margins for some of these new platforms.
It's interesting because certainly part of I think what I'm hearing is there's been a high demand for years, but really COVID just kind of put some lighter fluid on the already existing fire, and obviously with capital out there and needs, obviously that became the primary driver for some of this activity. And I think the other thing I heard, Jeff, is some of it's product diversity, some of it's market saturation, which obviously both would lend well to our industrials who are looking to grow. I guess there's a piece of it too where it's probably where you're getting, you mentioned a bit about supply chain, where you're getting your products from. How do you cut out the middleman? Do you feel like that's been kept normal pace, or has that been accelerated as well?
I think that's been kept, that's generally the reason that most PE firms are acquiring businesses, right? They see a industry that is ripe for consolidation, right? There's a lot of synergies out there they can get by doing, combining companies, and so that's what they're chasing after. But what was the second part of your question?
Yeah, well, I think you answered it. I think is the trend, which it has been to acquire to ease supply chain. I think, you had given some examples on how do businesses look at, again, that market saturation, which could be through M&A or product diversity. So no, you answered the question. And I think it's interesting because, some people think this just started, or this just started ramping up, but it's really been a trend for a longer time. And I think the accelerator comment really speaks to a bit of that, what's happening with tax law and what folks want to manage, truly try to manage between here and now and year end. So, if you were going to advise industrials or any client for that matter on, what they should be thinking about or what they should be focused on if they have buy side or sell side desires, what's your perspective on the next 12 months?
Well, everyone's scrambling to get deals done by year end for obvious reasons. If you can save yourself that 20% on a transaction, it's a no-brainer, right? So if you're, I just sort of thought of this. If you're on the buy side and you want to get some deals done, I would say that it's a great time to try to get deals done because there's sellers out there who want to get the deal done by year end. The biggest problem is the accounting firms like us and the attorneys. They're so busy. We're part of the problem, right? Because there's so many deals out there, and right now we're 3 to 5 weeks out on new projects, and that's just because we just can't physically handle that many deals.
Yeah, and I think to that point, that's probably the same for the lawyers, to your point, and really any firm. And I think that's you can read that in the paper and you can hear that on the news. Just time is of the essence.
Yeah. And then I just wanted to mention on the sell side, because there's this sort of new influx of sellers, and matching them up with this enormous amount of capital, dry powder out there. It's a great time to sell your business, right? Because the multiples are outrageous. I've seen a couple of my buddies in the healthcare business just ring the bell for some pretty big numbers. And so as part of your ongoing retirement strategy as a business owner, I can't think of a better time to sell than right now.
Yeah, well, that's a big enough carrot for a lot of folks right there, the tax savings, but also just the high demand. So I think, Jeff, it's easy to say we could probably talk about this topic for hours, and we could talk about some of the pitfalls that can happen without good planning. But I think for our listeners, you've certainly given a good idea of kind of what the general landscape is, what's generating this high demand and arguably pent up demand, and how companies are really looking at it to navigate. So appreciate that.
Sure, sure.
So for our listeners, we hope while it was a brief conversation, you at least got a sneak peek at what that deal landscape looks like, and maybe walk away with some ideas and thoughts on what you need to do in the short term. Additional guidance on this topic discussed today, including the case studies highlighted by Jeff and done by our deal advisory services team, can be found on the related guidance section of this podcast page. Also, please visit cbh.com/guide for more. We hope you will tune in for the rest of our series on building a competitive recovery. Next, in part 4, we will focus on the benefits new market tax credits can bring to your growth strategy. Then in part 5, we will review the tax strategies available to offset some of those expansion costs. In the previous parts of our series, we discussed using digital strategies to optimize supply chain. And in part 2, we focused on the impact of international tax changes and what those tax law changes might do to your supply chain. So we appreciate you all for listening. And Jeff, thanks for joining us today.
All right. Thanks for having me. Have a good day.